be unexpected things that arise in 2025 that God will send simply to help you grow. And often, at least in my case, those goals that God has in mind for you were not on your resolution list. Instead, they're things He's going to give you this upcoming year to work on through circumstance, and you're going to get them whether you want them or not. And often those lessons that God wants us to learn come with some pain and suffering. So we want to continue on that theme a little bit today. The title of today's lesson is Clay in the Potter's Hands. Clay in the Potter's Hands. I went to a small private liberal arts school in central Pennsylvania for my undergraduate education, Juniata College. And when I say small, it was small. The total campus population was 1,100 students, which is about half the size of the high school my kids went to. All 4 years, I lived in the same building on campus, on the northwest corner of campus. And just across the street from the dorm that I had lived in was the pottery shop. Now, it's a building I had never gone in. It's now known as the ceramics studio. But as I recall, reflecting back on that sign, the studio was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as evidenced by the smoke that was arising from the kilns that were constantly running in the pottery studio. So I hopped on the website this week to get a quick update on what's happening these days with the pottery shop, the ceramic studio. Turns out it is open 24/7 still. It has 6 kick wheels, which are more manual wheels to spin lumps of clay, 11 electric wheels, a slab roller, as well as a variety of kilns, including a gas kiln, 2 electric kilns, a soda kiln, no idea what that means, and a rare wood-find anagama kiln. I have no idea what that is either. I never took a class and so in pottery, so I never went in that building. But I kind of wish I did, because if I had, I'd have probably learned something about pottery and clay, but I was simply too busy geeking out on chemistry and math and biology and whatever other things I was doing in my major. But had I taken a class and maybe gotten in that pottery shop, I imagine I would have naturally understood this scripture in Isaiah 64:8 with greater insight. It says that you, Lord, are our Father. We are the clay. You are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. And so for today's lesson, since I never studied anything in college about pottery and clay, I studied some things out this past week to kind of help us better grasp this passage in Isaiah. Now, most of us probably, when it comes to pottery and clay, that image of just, that pot that's being formed, the clay that's being molded by hands on a spinning wheel, that's pretty familiar to us. And we understand that molding that clay involves some pressure, some spinning. Sometimes you even just have to smash it down and start all over again. But for whoever's making it, they do have a purpose in mind with all that. And hopefully what you'll see today is the purpose behind how God is working and molding our lives. He's doing that to create vessels for His glory. That's what I want to help you to see today. So I'm going to share a few just points about the process of pottery by looking at some scriptures. Then I want to share a personal story, and then we'll conclude with some applications for us as we try to understand more about this idea of God being the potter, us being the clay, and what it means to be molded, if you will, by the master. All right, first point today is this. The potter has intentional design. The potter has intentional design. God has a design for us, for you, for me, that's very personal and it's very intentional. How do I know this? I know this from Ephesians 2. Verse 10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." God knows what the end goal for each of us is. He knows the kind of vessel He wants to build for His purposes. And one of the things about the vessels that a potter makes and that God makes is that no two pieces are alike. A skilled potter never makes identical pots. Even if they're similar in some ways, each will always have unique characteristics due to the handiwork or the handcrafting of the artist. The same is true for us. God is working on and has designed each one of us uniquely and specifically for things and purposes which He probably has revealed and wants to reveal to you over your lifetime. And how He goes about building each one of us is different. Potters actually select different types of clay. There are different types of clay. I didn't know this, but which type of clay you choose relates to the intended purpose for the particular piece of pottery that's going to be made. Some clays are better for more delicate pottery. Others are made for more durable vessels. The point being that God chooses and shapes us for whatever roles He knows that you will be best suited for. And so God has in the past been working on you, and presently today, God is expending time, He's giving careful thought, and He's exerting exquisite craftsmanship on each one of you. Consider perhaps one of the all-time great artists, Michelangelo. Hunter and Grant, Hunter's actually here visiting with us today, back from Europe for a handful of weeks. And Hunter and Grant this past summer were traveling throughout Europe. One of the places, many places they got to visit was the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City. Well, what's in the Sistine Chapel in terms of painting? Well, of course, Michelangelo painted that. It's the ceiling, the sides, the walls of the Sistine Chapel, that each panel or section is a biblical narrative or scene. He spent 4 years from 1508 to 1512 painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling. He worked lying on scaffolding in awkward positions, sometimes on his back for hours daily, meticulously painting biblical scenes with incredible detail. Probably the most famous panel is this one, which is entitled The Creation of Adam, where the figures represent God and Adam reaching for each other with their arms outstretched. One of the world's most recognizable and most replicated images. For Michelangelo, each brushstroke was a testament to his patience. He used techniques like fresco to apply pigment to wet plaster, which required both precision and speed because you had to do it before the plaster dried. He described the backbreaking labor in this project in letters to friends as he was, recounting how he had to lie on his back and in awkward positions, oftentimes craning his neck upward for hours and hours, day after day for 4 years. This highly uncomfortable position to him caused significant strain, led to chronic neck and back pain. In one letter he wrote, Michelangelo wrote humorously about the toll it took on his body. He said, "I've already grown a goiter from this torture. My stomach squashed under my chin. My face makes a fine floor for paint droppings. My beard's pointing at heaven. My brain's crushed in a casket," and on and on and on. He was quite sort of maybe tongue-in-cheek here speaking, but nonetheless, he maintained, committed to creating a masterpiece that still impresses and amazes viewers today, centuries later. Now imagine God as the artist, who has far greater creative ability, far superior physical and emotional endurance than a Michelangelo. And he's working on you and me, investing time and care, keeping an eye on every detail with a relentless pursuit of ultimate perfection. As American Christian author A.W. Tozer puts this process, God never hurries. There are no deadlines against which He must work. Only to know this is to quiet our spirits and relax our nerves. I don't know about you, but for me, knowing that God has a unique plan and a specific purpose for me, for you, for us, and understanding that He's the master artist should help quiet our souls and relax our nerves no matter what circumstances are currently going on in our lives. The second point about pottery and the potter is the refining process. Remember, God is starting with clay. And he has to choose the type of clay, then he has to prep it, he has to get it on the spinning wheel. And at this point, we're just beginning. There's so much additional shaping work to do. And just as clay is then pressed and spun and massaged and kneaded and then fired, we end up being refined through these challenges we experience in life to develop our character and faith. And that shaping process, as we know, can be painful, but it's necessary to get to the final product, to become that vessel useful for God's purposes. James, the brother of Jesus, talks about this process this way. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. When we get tested, when there's some pressure on us and some shaping and maybe some heat, we just feel this way in life. We often feel like, I'm being pressed, I'm being spun, I'm being shaped. And I doubt that that really will ever change, quite frankly. Oh yes, we get periods of calm and stability and peace, but we know they do not last. Why don't they last? They don't last because for the potter, the wheel is constantly spinning. The clay spins on the wheel continually so the potter can shape it, so God can shape us. And that spinning kind of metaphorically represents just the constant changes in our life circumstances. And God's then going to use that to mold us. One of the reasons, by the way, as I was studying out this pottery and spinning it on a wheel and then, firing it and creating a finished product, part of the reason for the constant spinning is that air bubbles and air pockets form inside the clay. And when the clay has hidden air pockets, if they're not removed before they go into the kiln, they will explode. So skilled potters will knead and wedge and massage the clay repeatedly and over and again, just to be sure they're removing all those flaws. That's very much akin to how God removes hidden sins or weaknesses or pride in our lives through trials so that we can withstand the pressures that life sends our way. And over time, that process strengthens us and grows us. Now, I imagine, like you, I would personally strongly prefer that God's work of shaping me was done. That life's challenges just force us to stay on that table spinning and Him to keep molding us and for us to be pliable in the hands of God. Yet I wish my refining was over. In fact, when I hit hard times, I want them to be resolved as quickly as possible. But if that were always true, I imagine I would miss the opportunity to grow. And at least for me, my reality is one incident is rarely enough to transform me. It seems for me that only refining, and shaping actually will bring the growth and eventually the rest that I'm so eager to find. So, third point, why all this crafting, shaping, spinning, refining? We've kind of alluded to it, but the ultimate goal is this in 2 Timothy 2. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable, he will be a what? A vessel for honorable use. That's the goal. Set apart as holy, useful to the master of the house, ready for every good work. The idea that Paul here is trying to convey to his young protege Timothy is that as we surrender to God's shaping, He will transform us into vessels that can carry His message of love, of grace to others. Jocko Willink, who you guys may be familiar with, is the author of several books. This is probably his most famous, Extreme Ownership. The subtitle is How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. He himself was a former SEAL Team 3 member. And I was listening to a little bit of some of his work this week. And his attitude, he was describing his attitude when he encounters a problem or has an issue or a crisis arises or some circumstance comes up unexpectedly. He said, when that happens to me, I'm like, good. It means I get to grow. And I'm like, oh, shut up. If only I could have that attitude, right? If that was just my attitude when challenges and unexpected things come up. At the beginning of this year, 2025, I've added a program to my physical training for mobility training, something I've never been accused of having, mobility. And it's not flexibility, it's not getting your muscles massaged, it's not chiropractic and loosening things up, all of which I've tried them before and they're all extremely short-lived and it's kind of a waste of my money, at least for me. But mobility is kind of moving through space and on the ground, and it's like every joint, neck, back, shoulders, ankles, wrists, and I'm trying to do things that I haven't done since I was probably 5 years old. It's quite humorous, actually. That's why I'm not going to do it for you, because I don't want to look like that. But the idea is to build strength and kind of enhance non-linear range of motion. And so far, just, 6, 7, 8 days into this, it's honestly like some of my joints are a little achy, some pains in my lower back, like they're gone. Like it feels amazing. Anyhow, I think it's working. But the instructor, I was listening to one of their podcasts this week, and they said this about my journey on mobility. It's not always going to be easy. I'm like, you're right. You will feel sore. Yep. You will be humbled. Definitely, completely. You will be uncomfortable with certain movements. Mm-hmm. You will be challenged. Nodding my head still. Some days you will not want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all that. But you must fight through it. And I find that that's not just true for mobility training. That's true for life. If there weren't a purpose behind the suffering and pain, all of that perseverance through all those challenges, it'd just be very futile and grim. But Paul reminds Timothy and us that all the spinning, shaping, refining that God brings into our lives not only has a purpose, it also has an honor to it. For he or she will be a vessel for honorable use, set apart as holy, useful to the master of the house, ready for every good work. And so our mission, should we choose to accept it as disciples, is to surrender to God's hands, trusting his wisdom even when the process feels uncomfortable. So molded by the potter. He's the potter, I'm the clay. Clay in the hands, in the potter's hands. So, how might all of this look, these principles about pottery and the clay and so on and so forth, look in real life? Let me share personally for a little bit. As many of you know, Dawn and I spent a couple of years on the mission field in New Zealand. What many of you don't know is that my first ambulance ride happened when I was living down under. It all began when I was in our New Zealand home, probably about 5 months after arriving in New Zealand, not long after our middle son, Grant, was born there. And I was in my office and I started to feel unwell. I was sweating. My heart was racing. I had my finger on my carotid listening. I had this pain in my sternum, in my chest. I was a bit unsteady and shaky, kind of short of breath a little bit, and I had pain and tingling in my left arm. Thought I was having a heart attack. I hesitated for a moment or two in the hallway, and Dawn was down the hallway, and I'm like, honey, you need to get me to the emergency room now. So we dash into the car, she's driving, and on the way there, literally, I'm trying to pray, I'm confessing sins, I'm freaking out. I mean, it was quite a ride to get to we call it urgent care there, but they did an EKG, normal. They did a blood test for troponin C, which is released if there's heart damage from a heart attack, all normal. So they sent me home, but thus began a period of having repeated such episodes for really the remainder of our time in New Zealand. One time we had gone to Australia for work meetings, and we had taken a break. And I was just like, Dawn, I'm going to go for a little walk in the neighborhood, look around. And I had an episode when I was walking on the street. I sat down on a park bench, tried to collect myself, get myself together, and I couldn't. And I was kind of looking around like, where do I go? I wasn't sure what to do. And I saw a restaurant, and I went into the restaurant, and the hostess or whatever was there, I'm like, I'm not feeling well. Please call my wife. Here's her number. They called an ambulance, and I was rushed off to the hospital. They, like we did in New Zealand, they ran diagnostics, everything looked normal, they sent me home. But all of that left me on edge. I kept having these symptoms, had additional trips to the urgent care and the ER. And then they began a series of more intense diagnostics, trying to figure out what's going on. And so they really looked at the heart a lot first. They put me on a stress test, on a treadmill, and, more comprehensive EKGs. It looks normal. And they're like, maybe this is, you have an ulcer, and something's going on with heartburn. So I got scoped to check for ulcers, reflux, damage, everything looked fine. Then I had a manometer test. A manometer test is when you take something on the end of a long cord and you swallow it and you get that down in your stomach, and then they measure your peristalsis all along from your back of your tongue to your stomach to make sure everything's functioning smoothly and operating properly. That was not fun, but again, nothing, you look normal, nothing, you look normal. And I'm starting to feel crazy. I'm like, ugh, you doctors are not helpful at all in anything. What's wrong with you? So I kept having these episodes, and it left me on edge, and I was constantly worrying about when's the next one going to happen. I mean, it was highly unsettling. I was just at unease. Anytime I had pain in my chest, oh no, or anytime I sweated, oh no, or had a little pain in my arm. Maybe it was just for a workout, but I don't know. Maybe it's happening again. Well, Dawn had befriended a couple that lived down the street who were both chiropractors, or chiros as they call them in New Zealand, and she had shared in one conversation with them my symptoms. So they're like, have them come. Maybe there's something, a component of this that's muscular skeletal. So I went several times, got some exercises to relieve especially some of the tension in the middle of my back, but I still wasn't settled. The symptoms were still unknown, and it wasn't long after that we returned to the U.S. undiagnosed, questions still lingering. Well, back in the U.S., we ended up in Philly to minister in the north region there, and I had another episode that took me to the hospital. And I started seeing my local doctor, and finally he said, I think you may be having panic attacks. And I'm like, you're crazy. No. Like, what? And he's like, no, really. I think you may be having panic attacks. So he prescribed some medication. I think I got Zoloft. I think I got a benzodiazepine. And he sent me off on my merry way. And, it was somewhat comforting. But I'm like, this doesn't seem to completely match. Well, not long after that, I was on a run in my neighborhood, and my lower back seized up. First time ever. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting old. Like, this is so depressing. Like, I'm going to have, I kind of resigned myself to the fact, I guess I've gotten old enough now that I have to stretch before doing an exercise, maybe stretch after. And I'm like, I am ancient. The body is falling apart. I was so sad. But I really didn't think any more of it at the time other than I'm getting old. But within a handful of months, that lower back pain, this is all going somewhere. This is all going to connect. Hang with me. All right? Within a handful of months, that lower back pain amplified and became debilitating. Now, the silver lining with the debilitating pain was it temporarily helped me not think about my other issues. And so I had something else to worry about now. And I'm like, oh, great, But the pain got so bad that I would sleep maybe total per night 2 hours a night. I would try to sleep in various positions. I'd sleep on the floor, I'd sleep on the bed, I'd sleep with one foot out, I would sleep on my knees laying over the bed, I'd sleep on a couch sideways with, my back on one armrest, my legs up over the other armrest, just trying to find some relief for the pain. It was horrific. I couldn't get in and out of the car. I'd go to church and I couldn't sit down. I'd have to stand the whole time. I would stand in the back until it was time to preach. I'd come up and preach, and then I would exit. Like it was everything I could do to get like an hour and 15 minutes out of myself vertical. It was excruciating in my back and my right lower leg. 3 kids in diapers, I couldn't help them at all. And the longer it went, the angrier and meaner I got. I don't know how you are when you suffer from lack of sleep or maybe lack of food, whatever. It was not good. My doctor and my health insurance company kept dragging their feet. Just take Advil. Just take more Advil. Okay, try some steroids, but you can only do those for a certain period of time. They wouldn't do an x-ray or MRI. Go to the physical therapist. I went and literally they massaged me that particular day. I could not get off the table. I'm like, I can't get up to go. And they're like, well, just stay there for another hour and a half. And I just remember getting up. They finally helped me up and getting back to my car, trying to walk back to my car, crying. I was in so much pain. So finally, I got another appointment with my doctor, and I demanded, you must get an x-ray or MRI. What is going on with this pain? And finally, about 9 months after the initial pain, I was sent for testing, and the MRI revealed I had degenerative discs in my cervical area, thoracic area between my shoulder blades, and in my lumbar area. It was so bad, these degenerative discs, my father-in-law, who's an orthopedic surgeon, I sent him the x-rays and MRI charts, and he's like, when were you in a very bad car accident? And I'm like, I've never been in a car accident. He's like, your back looks like you were in a pretty horrific car accident. But most alarmingly, out of all this, is that, yes, there were degenerative discs, but there was a white mass that lit up L3 position of my spinal cord that I'm not a radiologist, I'm like, that's a problem. That brightly colored thing should not be there. And so my father-in-law searched for the best neurosurgeon he could find, found an amazing doctor at University of Michigan, so we traveled from Philly to Ann Arbor for surgery, and the decision was to remove that tumor because they thought, hopefully it's certainly the thing that's most concerning right now, and it may be causing your debilitating pain. So I had successful surgery. They removed a lower grade stage 2 ependymoma, no chemo, no radiation. I was clear at year 1 and year 5, and the pain subsided, but 10 days later, all the pain returned. So evidently the pain was the result of the herniated disc there, not the tumor. So I had to convalesce for about 4 months following that first surgery, being able to lift nothing heavier than a Sunday newspaper, and then I went back for another back surgery, this time to repair my herniated L4, L5 disc and to address some significant spinal stenosis, and thus began another 4 months of convalescence. God bless my wife, because I am not a pleasant sick person. And we had those 3 kids, so nearly 100% of the care for them fell on her. Oh, by the way, the thoracic thing, I finally figured out what was causing my panic attacks. Knowing that now I had a bad disc between my shoulder blades, what was happening is when that disc got inflamed or irritated, the pain in the disc would radiate through the rib connected to it right to my sternum, and that caused the chest pain. And the chest pain then would lead to I'm not breathing right, I'm hyperventilating, now I'm starting to breathe faster, now I'm sweating, now I'm having a panic attack. So we were kind of able to button that up and put those 2 things together. I've not had anything since then. But with the aid of 20/20 vision, why do I share all that? That was like 7 or 8 minutes of a very long story about me. What I want to share is how God was refining and molding me through that season of life. Even though at the time it was so hard to see God as a loving potter, He was seeking to transform me, and pain and suffering were part of the process. Here's a few of the blessings that came from that time. First is this: my pain through that herniated disc that was excruciating and debilitating for 9 months revealed a dangerous spinal tumor that otherwise would have gone undiagnosed and could have had disastrous consequences. I hated the process of unbearable pain that led to its discovery, but now, with 20/20 hindsight, I'm so eternally grateful. I was angry and bittered in how it was impacting my daily living, but little did I know God was using it as a tool to actually keep me alive. The second blessing was this: my several-year-long bout with the anxiety issues and panic and with the pain changed how I felt about others with chronic pain issues. Frankly, prior to this, I was extremely judgmental of people. I kind of poo-pooed people with so-called chronic pain or chronic illness. I'm like, toughen up, buttercup. I mean, don't be so soft. By the way, are you just being lazy? Are you imagining things? Are you making stuff up in your head? Are you faking this? God used my own suffering and chronic pain to teach me empathy and compassion that I didn't have. I'm a much kinder and nicer and far less judgmental person than I was before all that. I imagine that I wouldn't have grown in this area if I hadn't been through that saga myself. A third blessing: when we are suffering or in times of turmoil, we often think God has forgotten about us. And yet, in retrospect, one way that I see he was working in ways I had no clue about to help us in our time of need. You see, friends of ours that are best friends in New Zealand, prior to this happening, before all the pain manifested, called and said, hey, we want to come and live with you guys for a year or so in the United States. We'd like, yes, we would eagerly love you to come. Little did Don and I know at that point how valuable and how willing they would be in helping me, in helping my wife, in helping our children, serving my family in a myriad of ways while I was down and out for the better part of 9 or 10 months. It just brings me to tears thinking about it. And, even though my self-reliant spirit hated relying on others, God was working on that as well, as he put me in a position where I could only be served and not served. I'm so glad that God put it on Chris and Aaron hearts to come for reasons they didn't know and for reasons I had no idea about, and it ended up being one of the biggest blessings to us that we ever could have imagined. And maybe lastly to share, and then we'll wind up, and I didn't learn this fully at the time, but it was a start. The experience showed me I have to advocate more strongly for myself. Others won't do it for you. I wish I had demanded an MRI day one. Years later, I've become far more aggressive in advocating, especially when it comes to my health and those types of things. It's one of the reasons I'm so serious about my current health journey. And let me just say this, brothers and sisters, public service announcement. I've mentioned that coronary calcium scan. New year, new you. It's time to stop making excuses. Go get that exam. It's only $99. You may think, well, I get a result. There's nothing I can do to fix it if I do have some heart issues anyway. That's false. There are many accessible and effective things you can do that I didn't know of until a year and a half ago for cardiovascular disease. And I think back to my pain, and I regret not taking action sooner. Had I done so, I would have been spared more pain and agony and distress if I'd have just advocated and just taken action. And the same is true even for your physical heart, not just your spiritual heart. All right, enough of my soapbox there. So, the new year is underway. At the onset of a new year season, experience tells us that most of us in the year, we're going to have a mixed bag of experiences this year. Joys, successes, triumphs, setbacks, successes and failures, delights, disappointments, happiness, and heartache. It's going to be a mixed bag. I mean, some of the challenging things are bad things. Maybe they're smaller. Maybe it's spilling coffee and staining your favorite shirt. That's a bummer. It's burning dinner. Not getting what you wanted for Christmas. Maybe not being invited to prom by that special person. Or maybe a breakup or losing your phone or key fob. Car key fobs are very expensive. That's not cool. Maybe it's not getting into the college you wanted to, or not making the varsity team, or maybe it's greater things, greater bad things, more bad things that have greater significance, a cancer diagnosis, infidelity, death of a spouse, infertility, job loss, trauma from abuse, chronic illness, the unimaginable loss of a child. Just remember, when bad comes, remember that doesn't mean you are somehow lesser. God doesn't want you to feel inferior or that he's overlooking you or that you are being unfairly targeted or that he has abandoned you. In fact, it's just the opposite. He says, never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you. So we can say with confidence, the Lord is my potter. My Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Brothers and sisters, the potter's hands never leave the pottery on the wheel. The potter is constantly touching during the shaping, and you're going to be shaped your entire life here on planet Earth, which means his hands are on you all the time. He never leaves, never forsakes, never abandons, even in the painful moments. Trust him. He's up to some good, even if it's hard to see it. And maybe you too, through whatever challenges you have this year, will become greater vessels of honor. More compassionate, more empathetic, more loving, more patient, more kind, more forgiving, more trusting in God, and so on. So here, take a picture of this next screen. Here are a few questions that you can think about this week. Several questions I invite you to reflect on, just to engage the content of today's lesson, and then just pray over this. Listen, fast, maybe ponder. but I want to ask you, where are we at time-wise? We have just a few minutes to wrap up here. I want you to just, as we often do, we often end by just chatting with somebody or a couple people right next to us. Just pick one of these that you can answer and just begin answering with someone next to you to kind of start that discussion process. And in a few minutes, I'll dismiss everyone, parents to get their kids and such. So let's just take a few minutes, pick one, just chat with someone near you about, but then digest these this week. And let's make this a year where no matter what happens, we trust the potter's hands and we will remain pliable clay to him. Amen. Amen.